Welcome back to BG the podcast, and part 2 of our Homebrew mini-series. I'm Brendan.
I'm Logan.
I'm Ryan.
That's right. Today we are getting into Homebrew D&D, and we have a very special guest returning to the show, Ari.
Hi everyone, great to be back.
So Homebrew D&D, like, that covers a lot for one. Not just D&D, but RPGs in general.
Mm-hmm.
For, like, my experience, I didn't, like, make new classes. I made items, because I did, like, a great example, Perry's character in our campaign, Flargan.
With stick?
With stick, yep. So the whole thing of, like, he had his fighter, and when he chose his item, he's like, well, I want a stick. And then he's like, Flargan constantly talks. I think Plank from Ed, Edd n Eddy.
Right. And I want to clarify, little warning. A lot of these are going to be personal stories because it's the best way to convey this kind of concept.
Yep.
It's just through this is how it's been done in our own personal games.
Yeah, and that's really what Homebrew is. It's just tweaking the game or for you and your, like, audience or your group. But so stick, I wanted him to have a magic item because as though he levels up, he's the fighter. I was like, well, I'll just make stick magical, and then it's like everybody's like, can it be sentient? I'm like, heck yeah! When the party found out it was sentient, Perry had been, like, knocked out, and Tyler's character picked it up, and Stick started talking to him. He's like, what? He's like, he actually talks to the stick.
It's not just in his head.
Yeah,
So, kind of like a hexblade.
yeah, kind of like a hexblade. The idea is I stole the
borrowed.
I borrowed because in the actual DMG there's a sentient weapons, and there's like Black Blade. There's an elf one that's like, so it's like a spirit inhabits the blade. And what I did was, like, the stick has such a bond with Flargan that as Flargan gets more powerful, Stick got more powerful, so he could keep the item with him.
Right, it doesn't just go in a backpack.
So at first it was just a normal quarterstaff that was sentient. Then it became a +1, and then I think by the end of the campaign, it was a +2 instead of a +1, and it could act as a ring of spell storing, which let him store his signature spell, Thunderous Smite. Because that was how Perry's like, all right, Flargan's gonna go both hands on stick, Thunderous Smite, attack.
You let me have a magical item. I don't think it was homebrewed, but you let me have two shields as a paladin.
Yep. Because you had the normal.
I went super
defense build.
Yeah, so I went a lot of because I was filling in late in this campaign.
Yes, yeah, you came in right in the final arc,
like the last 2 months. I want to say of that campaign, and didn't have a lot of healing going on.
Right.
And so I wanted to be a paladin character, but I specifically chose to be a bad paladin. Like, I didn't want to be a metagame paladin.
I loved Melka because every time Melka would try to help somebody, it worked so terribly.
Every time I rolled a blessing, a healing, anything like that, nat one. Every time.
The best story I could tell is the child
kid who scraped his knee.
The kid who scraped his knee, and he went to roll medicine, and like it was like a 4, and he just like rubs it around like, you'll be okay, kid.
Slaps him and he starts crying.
The second one is they went to a drow city they're revisiting because early in the campaign they had, quick side story, I had this whole thing of like they're gonna fight in the drow pits and be tempted, and I forgot that Perry's character was an Eldritch Knight and just went weapon bond, got his weapon back, so, caused a whole riot. There was a bunch of like deep gnome slaves that he just incited to rebellion, and it was great. I was like, cool.
And you were like, well, that wasn't my bad. Yep. I didn't count for that.
So what happened when they came back to the city? It was completely destroyed. They had to fight the Drider, who was the old high priestess, because she'd been punished by Lolth for failing. But I remember that you came across some dead bodies and you went to pray over them, like, let me bless these souls. And you rolled a 2. It's like, I'm like, there's audible, like, the whispers, the damned or something. It's just like, definitely these souls were not doing great.
I'm like, wow, I'm so good at my job.
Yeah, I love you're like, I did good, dear. That was right.
And the rest of the party looking at me like,
and that's actually, and then up into that led into the homebrew encounter I'd made for there. There was a giant zombie spider that was a gift from Lolth to the city. And because what I did is my party was a bunch of DPS machines. Y'all killed stuff fast.
Was I there for this?
You were here for this.
Okay.
And so I'm like, well, how do I handle this? Of course, playing monsters smart, that's one way. A lot more bodies. What I did is I took the giant spider, made it bigger, gave it more hit points, gave it the zombie thing of when it drops to 0, you could roll a die. But instead I would just say, it would drop and then reset to half.
Yeah.
Depending on.
And now did you half each time, or
Yeah.
is it just always?
And then I halved each time. So the first time was just for free, and then the second time you had to make a con save.
Gotcha.
And it would half, it'd half from the half again.
The halves.
Yeah. Because the idea is it's deteriorating, but and it was a fun because also it's this giant zombie, so I gave it undead. I gave it web walking. I gave it legendary actions because the idea is like the party is really good at DPS. And it's like, so I don't want to be like, oh, y'all are playing the game wrong. I'm like, well, no, I'll just make my monsters better at handling DPS.
Right. So you made a homebrewed monster to help set in the campaign.
Yep.
Counting your players.
Yep. And then for items, so the end of the campaign, the whole thing was y'all were collecting these marks that were made by followers of the gods to fight the first lich. And it was long, long ago. There was a new lich who was kind of trying to like rise to power to deify himself. And to stop him from being able to just go to his phylactery, y'all had to collect the marks together.
I remember.
And then y'all found out at the end, and when all the marks came together, they gave you like party-wide buffs. And then like, I don't remember if we decided it was. I think y'all decided just to have y'all would choose as a group at the beginning of each round what buff was active. I think is what we
it
went
was something
for.
like that. It's been a while. It's been 2 years.
But it was
now.
really fun. I loved that, and it was like all your damage became radiant on the top of everything. Like y'all didn't care about difficult terrain, and you got like another 10 feet of movement, stuff like that.
Loved because as my paladin, I could do a bonus action where if I was within 10 feet or 10 meters, my apologies, of a ally, I can lunge and do a shield to protect
because you took the shield stuff.
Yeah, and so Brandon allowed me a magical item. And my magical item, I took a shield that floated around me.
Yep.
And so because of that, he allowed me to use both my main shield as a protection action and then use my floating shield within 10 meters as another. So I can do my main action, and the bonus action was the extra shield.
Yep.
So I can try to just, because I couldn't heal well, I just never rolled it well.
But
he let me play defense.
And then that's another thing of like, it's not just making stuff for the game; it's also changing like how the game sort of plays. Fun campaign.
I have a character story that works well with this topic.
I believe one we've talked about before. Too.
Yes, he's my favorite. I've not played him outside of this campaign ever because I don't like replaying characters. Like they're great and all, but he's great because of the story he was in.
Yeah.
And it's like
it's
if I was to
you
Matt
got to
Mercer, like Critical Role, make a character. I'm trying to think of like one of the characters, but I can't think of any right now.
Box.
Yeah, so like if I were to verbatim make that character, it would not have the same magic. So like I haven't revisited poor Blobbert. But,
his name was Blobbert?
His name was Blobbert. Well, he had a really long name.
How have I missed this all the times we've talked about it?
He had a really long name that I rolled like vowels and stuff for because when I do fictional names, I do like there's like a whole nerd system I have of like where to put vowels, like apostrophes, stuff like that to make. That's how I came with Malka.
You're gonna have to give that to me. I really like.
I'll have to find it. It's in one of my folders.
That's cool. I like that.
It was like a whole system I made with dice so that I can make names and not have to like think of them on the spot.
Yeah, because I get the thing of like, well, my names kind of just sound pretty generic-y fantasy names. Yeah.
Yes, and so, but Blobbert had a very complicated name. And no one wanted to say it, so I just called him Blobbert. And so that was just what he was by.
In your folks' tongue, I am Blobbert.
yeah, and that's exactly how I played it out.
Yeah.
You could just refer to me as Blobbert. And so in an old version of D&D or an old adventure one-off book, whatever it was, there was a race called Slime Folk, and it worked entirely different than any reference of Slime Folk ever. And the way it worked is their abilities were life-based abilities. So there were several things I can do. So for instance, if I broke off in half, if I took my 50 max HP and split it into 2 instances of 25 max HP, or 25 HP, I can use both of them to cast a fireball. But the fireball would be a fraction percentage of what my max HP is representing.
Right.
So if I'm split directly down the middle as a 25-25, I get 2 fireballs at half damage.
Oh, so instead of like, because I think fireball's like 6d6, they don't.
It would get
3d6. Oh, that's cool.
And
Okay.
so it was stuff like that. Yeah, and I like that concept a lot, where my health is a resource. So like one of the things I would often do is I would break off a 1 health piece of me and just lob it down like a cave, or like lob it in for a trap, because it's still, if it was the way the slime folk worked is that they can combine back and get your health back, but
Right.
if you're separated for too long, it became another entity. It's like that's how they're born.
Right.
And my health worked. I didn't get health from leveling up through Constitution.
Right.
I got health based off of how much mass I consumed that day, and would get benefits based on what that mass consisted of. Like if I ate a lot of metals, stuff like that. If I ate a lot of magical crystals, which I didn't use that too much. I usually just ate rocks.
Like I could see, like if you ate magical crystals, like hey, for the day you have you have resist to
Exactly.
magic.
It was different types of
Or you
resistances.
have advantage on like spell saves. Right. Okay.
And so it was mostly resistances, and then if I did a full sleep, because I'm not like getting any benefits to that, I would get to choose my speciality for that day. So like I could be resistant to blunt damage, and all blunt damage I will now be a resistant to.
Okay.
And so it was between piercing, slashing, and blunt, and I could choose between the 3, but I have to long rest, and once I chose, I could not choose again until I long rest.
This character. Okay, this is a cool race.
It was really cool.
Could you imagine doing a barbarian with this?
And so I did a sorcerer.
Yeah,
and
because the spellcasting is pretty cool.
Yeah, so the idea of like, and then I purposely chose a lot of like weak cantrip kind of magic for all my spell slots as I leveled up, because I was a true neutral. I might have been neutral good. So like I never did anything malicious, but I also never really progressed the campaign.
You didn't go out of your way to do stuff.
Yeah, like I wasn't like, oh, I should be trying to do this quest, or I should be participating. I was kind of just like the party pet, because the main thing about it is that my race communicates through telepathy, but telepathy is telepath is a level 5 or a level 8 skill.
Yep.
I didn't have it at level 1 where we started, and so the DM and part of this homebrew is she gave me weak telepathy, which let me speak 3 words at a time.
Yep.
And so until I hit level 8, I was not able to communicate effectively with the party. So I would have to be like, me, Blobbert, eat. Or Blobbert hurts bad.
They kind of gave you, like, in 5th ed, it's the warlock. They're like invocations. So basically warlock, like, to like change, like they get little special abilities, and one of them's Rake Reader of the Mind. Basically, it lets you communicate messages.
Right,
to
and so I can only communicate to one at a time, obviously, because I'm speaking to someone's brain.
I assume they also have to be like visible to you as well.
Yes, I couldn't speak through walls or anything like that, because then I wouldn't know where they are.
Right.
I didn't have some sort of sixth sense or anything. But it was just
message. Like,
yeah. And so like I can like turn to there was like I don't know what to call them. They tamed a lot of animals. And I don't think they were
tamer.
Yeah, they weren't like a druid, but
like a ranger.
I don't. It might have been a ranger, but they were just very good at like if we would defeat a group and they had like a boar or something.
Oh, they could like take their boar.
Yes.
Okay.
And then either sell it to market or like just keep it as a companion. But yeah, I love Blobbert as a class. Still one of my favorite characters ever in any of the campaigns I've both ran and played in. And it all comes from a homebrew. It does not exist. This character does not exist as a official race.
Yep. At
least it hasn't for a long time. But it's if you play it right, it's not necessarily broken either. It can definitely be broken.
And that's the thing about homebrew. You've got to
rein it in
and be willing. It's like, hey,
keep it balanced.
When playing it, somebody like, hey, that was a little busted. We're going to bring it down. So as a player and as a DM, you got to be like, understand what you make is not really going to be the final thing. Sometimes you will have to change it as things go.
Yeah. I've done a lot of homebrew stuff. I have a slight obsession with the Feywild. I feel like it doesn't get enough love in D&D, and it's such like an amazing like magical.
Oh,
I deserve so much more love.
Like my first arc was doing something with the Feywild. This is back like we'd only been playing
2014,
2015.
See, I'm good at guessing.
Yeah,
you're old.
Yeah, I really am. I really am.
I was still in high school in 2015.
I know.
Remember, good magic was 10 years ago.
It was. Back in my day, we didn't have none of these darn dolls. But yeah, the Feywild's fun.
I mean, I've made a lot of like homebrew Feywild creatures,
right?
Because I feel like fighting animals is kind of boring, but if you make them from the Feywild, they can be magical animals that
stuff,
do funky and like new, fun and fresh stuff.
Right, and you can make it up as you go.
Yes,
as needed.
You did that for our campaign.
Yes,
like you gave them like everybody Feywild sickness or something like that.
Yes, so I had them accidentally end up kind of in and out of the Feywild, kind of like it's supposed to be like a weak point in reality where the realms are shifting.
So like they're constantly shifting between the two.
And because of that, if they weren't accustomed to that type of magic or whatever, they got Feywild sickness, which was a whole like leveling thing. I set up where the first one was like they can't concentrate anymore. It's hard for them to focus. Just standard confusion. But then the next one is they start getting mood swings. Moving on from there, their perception of time is altered, so they have to roll to potentially lose
because
turns
the Feywild
or
has
take
weird
extra
time.
turns. So some benefit, they might lose a turn, they may get a turn based on
like
the roll.
Because
time is different in the Feywild, perception is different. Then is the memory muddling. They start getting dementia. They can't remember things they're past. They won't remember who. With the confusion and the mood swings, you're not going to know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and just gets really crazy. And then gets on to the paranoia, more so voices in your head telling you to do things that you probably shouldn't do. And then lastly, like the Feywild trying to actually claim you. More evil fairy magic.
So you just walk into the forest and disappear, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And then, like, similar to how you lose levels of exhaustion, there's a certain amount of time, there's resting, there's spending time grounded in nature.
Getting out of the Feywild.
Yeah, like spending time, like, under the full moon and stuff like that is what I had. But
that's cool.
Yeah, I made a whole system for that because, like, I really want them to do that, and I really want more, like, nature world interaction.
Right.
To be
not just cities every time.
Possible bad guy. It's not just, we're visiting a city, here's a shop, here's a bad guy, here's a bandit. Now there's something where the game is actively trying to like kill you essentially.
Right. As it should.
It's great to hear as a DM you made something and got to use it. The players just did it like completely circumventing, like, okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's the worst, dude. I have a homebrewed entirely zombie campaign, and like I'll be like, in this area you should be looking for weapons, and they're like, I found a car, I'm gonna drive away. I'm like,
no, what? That's not what I said.
What? But they roll, and like I'm gonna let them do it, but I'm also like, but now you have no weapons. You're just gonna drive away.
So, for another, I was playing. It's called Death Watch, so it's a 40K, and the idea is you're a group of Space Marines who are Xeno hunters. Like their whole deal is they deal with
just the aliens.
The aliens, right? Yeah. The other aliens, and it was this giant space Hulk.
Okay.
And
that's a classification of ship, right?
Yeah, so Space Hulk, think like
I was thinking big green man with a
fishbowl
helmet.
I'm sorry, I realized like that's nomenclature. Like I get it. Let me explain. So a Space Hulk.
I know enough that I can kind of set you straight.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, it's one of those things like I'm used to talking to Warhammer with Warhammer people, so sometimes I forget that. So what a Space Hulk is a group of wrecked ships in outer space. And what happened is they had got a signal, and they were investigating it. And the homebrew comes in is my brother was playing, and he's like, "Hey, Brandon, I would really like to play my Marine being from your chapter that you made for your." I was like, "Cool." And we looked at him like, there's none. So we had to make like, what stat benefits do you get for being a Star Saver? Like, what is that? My favorite line from that campaign is, they're talking smack. One of the guys played a Minotaur, which the Minotaurs, their whole thing is taking out other Space Marine chapters. So he was not liked by the other Marines, of the in-character thing. And they had just finished this fight. He's like, hey, one of the guys who's playing a Flesh Terror, he goes, "Hey, DM, what's the range on a Drukhari body?" And I'm like, "What?" And it broke me for a second. I'm like, "What?" Another thing about that game, speaking of Drukhari, is they just didn't support it a lot. So the only enemies I had were Necrons. I'm like, I'm not throwing Necrons at you guys.
Yeah, just unkillable.
I'm not throwing Egyptian space Terminators at you as level 1 characters. Let's back it up a little bit. And I wanted to introduce orcs. There were no orcs and there were no Drukhari, so I had to make my own characters, like
like not a rule set, but like a
I had a-
stat set.
Yep, I had to make my own stats. So that's a homebrew thing. Is like sometimes the game doesn't provide you the stuff you need, so you have to do it yourself. They messed them up because you're Space Marines, you're giant, 8 foot tall armored tank men with chain swords and Gatling guns. I'm like, yeah, I have a space elf with a a sniper. He did not do well. You know what defeated him though? A door. A door is what.
Oh my
It's
god.
always the doors.
I've been playing the new Call of Duty, and the amount of doors I've died to is absurd. When I do run as a DM, and I'm running a campaign, or I'm assisting in helping,
Right.
Not assisting in helping. I'm assisting in running a campaign. Items are a big thing that just get homebrewed all the time.
Yeah.
If they're trying to craft a potion, but they
Native
don't have the right
items suck.
ingredients.
Magic items are good.
What items suck?
The native, the
yes.
base items suck. Magic items,
Yeah.
good.
A big part of it will be like improvised weapons. Like I said, I had that zombie campaign.
Yep.
And if they broke a handle off a chair or something, I had a classification of weapon based off of what I deemed its lethality was as an improvised weapon card that I would hand to those people, and it would have a stat sheet for it.
Oh, that's cool.
Because I didn't want them to just be like, oh, I need to find a weapon. Like I need to find a bat, or I need to find.
You want to reward them for thinking it's like, oh, hey, there's this like, oh, here's this chair leg that is somewhat club-like. I can use that for now.
Right, and so like I gave them stat lines.
Okay.
And then when it comes to D&D, it would be like actual fantasy D&D. A lot of the times it would be potions. You would have someone try to craft a potion. They wouldn't roll high enough knowledge on the topic, so they wouldn't know an exact recipe.
Right.
And so I would take the ingredients, see what potions they are related to, and kind of do like a mixture potion where it's like it's got a little bit of this and a little bit of
So
that.
it's not just like,
Suspicious
oh, you failed.
stew from Minecraft.
Well, so it's not just
Or
like,
like Skyrim is basically what
Yeah.
I borrowed it from.
it's not like, oh, you failed, you don't get anything. It's you still get something, but it's not what you intended.
Right. So like in Skyrim, which is where I got it from, you can get like a poison potion of health regen. It's like, okay,
Right.
well, I didn't want those two things, but because the ingredients worked out that way, you had enough ingredients that work. They cooperate with each other.
Right.
There's enough overlap.
For me personally, for homebrew, I can only kind of talk about it from like a player stance. I've never DM'd.
Do you think it helps you as a player?
Yes, I love homebrew. I don't think I've ever played in a campaign that wasn't homebrew.
That's
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 valid.
that's
fair.
pretty.
A lot
I think
of
that's
those
the
are-
the general D&D experience.
Well, so what are some homebrew features that you've played with that you liked, or that you felt like added enough to the game for quality of life?
I think so. I have like this Asmar character who's like my main character for everything. I've just made her me. And in the rule set, Asmars can like have a transformation thing that gives them wings or like skeletal wings, depending on like what type of Asmar they are.
yeah.
And so with that, I was like, well, that's boring. Like the transformation itself is cool, but I asked the DM and I was like, can I just have wings all the time?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, yeah, you're gonna like move slower and you'll still have
Heavy.
to like charge up to do these like extra things, but you can just have wings. It's not gonna hurt the campaign.
Oh, they're just present. And he's like, okay, cool. There's like, yeah, they're present. There you go.
yeah,
Yeah, you wanted it to be a defining
It's just
character
weight.
trait.
yeah.
But that's an aesthetic feature, and they're like, that
Mhm.
doesn't hurt the thing.
Flavor is free.
Yeah.
Yeah, flavor is free.
Or, like,
Flavor is the easiest homebrew.
yeah. Or like I'm in another campaign where the entire it is like just homebrew. It's not from like anything specific, or I'm in a few of those actually, but casually forgetting some. But the whole world is homebrewed, and like there's like hierarchy systems, and we're like having to choose if we're gonna like join the rebellion or not.
Oh.
And it's
Oh, dang.
like this fight, and we're like we got kind of zapped to the Feywild to discuss if we're gonna join their side or if we're gonna like fight to like keep society.
I broke my mic. Don't mind that.
But like these are such cool things that as a player it's like super cool to see that it's not just base game stuff. Like the rules aren't as like set in stone. And I think that's like my favorite part of D&D is that
Yeah, it's the stories you make along the way.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I mentioned earlier, Perry's character, Jamie's character also wound up having an item because the sword was his family sword. I'm like, and I hate when somebody's like, this item means something to my character. It's like, okay, well, here's a magic item you replace it with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not in the book. So here is a very well defined
what I
item
will-
to give you.
Yeah.
So I would make items that level up with the character, so
yeah,
they have something.
I have two comments similar to that, if I may.
No.
One is
Absolutely not.
I got inspired from someone who DM'd a game for me and also Ari with custom enchants. You can pay if you find a shop when you have downtime. You can pay whatever amount of gold to get an enchant you want on a weapon.
Right.
So you can have your family heirloom and you can make it better, do something cool, fancy, or you can pay less money but you roll a die and you get a random enchant. And if after you get so many enchants to equate to a legendary status, you start getting negative ones or you can't get anymore. And the negative enchants can be anything from you can fail on like a 5 or lower. More simple ones, like if you have resistance to acid, you lose that resistance.
I feel like you used the enchantment system so much with the runes and everything.
I do. I kind of broke it.
So funny thing, that's actually a feature now of Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
Yes.
So that's really cool. It's like, yeah, like a lot of time, like the fandom will come up with a thing before the actual people do, or
like the fandom's playtesting it, right?
Yeah.
So like maybe R&D already has that in mind because it's just a very good concept,
and they leaked it on Reddit.
And they're like,
or it's just like it just makes sense in that world, but R&D wasn't quite confident that people would take well to it.
Because one of my biggest complaints with D&D is weapons. If you can't really keep the same one, you got to upgrade. Which is another homebrew thing I do is how spells level with you. I have your weapons level, so instead of doing a whip doing 1d4, it starts doing 2d4 when you get a higher level, and it increases. Cool. It scales just like the cantrips do. Because the sense with the cantrip is you've used a spell so much, you're so good at magic, it does more damage. Why can't that apply to you using a sword?
Why doesn't that work with like your rapier?
It's the same sword, but if you give someone a sword and give someone who's had a sword for 20 years the same sword, the 20-year sword is going to do leagues better, despite being the same exact thing. So I make it so the weapons can scale.
I didn't play with that particularly, obviously. But a long time ago, 6 years ago, I guess now. I played with someone who had a durability system for their gear. And so you can keep gear with you, and then when you get to the next town where there's a blacksmith, you can pay to have stuff repaired.
Like maintenance on it.
Yes. And so based on that durability system is how well it would work. But the better you were at repairing stuff through repairing that armor over and over and over again, or that weapon over and over again, it would have higher stats at the beginning of a life. And so the more you did it, the higher your skill, which was a separate skill tracked. It was like a blacksmithing skill or something like that. And so you can keep your same gear, and it wasn't always just better, but like if you were preparing for an adventure at a city and you're near a blacksmith, or you just did a bandit camp and they have their own blacksmithing set, you could repair your gear and it would be buffed. It would be buffed for a short time and go on from there. And it was like a skill that you develop over time, and obviously that's fully homebrew, does not exist. But it was like a fun thing that it's like almost like a mini game where it's like, oh, let's see what I can get on my armor this time.
No, that's cool.
I've had something similar in the same campaign that's like choosing sides now. That the barbarian just really wanted to learn how to blacksmith his own weapons. He we started out with like going to just a stand and him like trying to blacksmith, and he like ruined his axe because like starting off you roll like a D100, like is it good, is it not? But now he's like blacksmithing on the ship and like making these daggers for us and making all these weapons and like learning how to make handles and everything. And so he's like learning this, and it is like a skill that you improve over time.
That's fun.
Cool,
see,
like, concept.
And that like feels rewarding to the player too. It's like, oh, I wanted to do this thing, and the DM like lets you get better at it.
And it's character development.
It also is a character thing, yeah.
So like for me, the eating the bottles, there were better ways for me to gain mass to gain skill points, basically. But the bottles was so thematically appropriate for the campaign itself.
It just worked.
That's just what I kept, even if it wasn't the most metagamey kind of way to play it. I would still eat rocks, and sometimes I would consume because I was true neutral. So sometimes like if I thought something was going to be too strong for the party, I would go eat it. So like if there was like a set of armor that's on one of the bandits, I would roll agility to get to it first.
I love the idea of like even like the rogue and the fighter are arguing over it, gets it, and Blobber just
yes, that's exactly how it went.
Times where you tell a dog no, don't.
And they played into that pet aesthetic that I had going on with the party.
Guys, Blobber ate that armor you were talking about.
That's exactly how it would go. And like in fights, I would So in fights, so they didn't quite know that I was casting spells.
Right.
They like could see like the fireballs and stuff like that. But I also had healing spells. I had a few healing subclasses in spells.
Like, just pick up
and
some
so
of
what I would do is like in a fight, if the team was like too strong, in order to help the DM out, is I would go and heal the enemy because I felt like the fight was not fair enough.
You definitely sound like you're chaotic neutral.
That's my thing. You're right. And yes, I would do that all the time. And then one time, and this was huge
it's
tangent.
like, wait a minute.
No, huge tangent. I was in a cave, and I just put on my little detective hat, not real, but like metaphorically, because I found some glyphs on a wall, and I rolled and I recognized the glyphs,
right?
But I didn't know enough to be able to like
decipher them.
Yes, and so I was attempting multiple rolls and trying to figure out what this wall is saying. It's some sort of prophecy that was very important to the story, which is why we were there. We were there to get a relic in regards to that,
right?
And it was foretelling a prophecy. And I'm sitting there minding my own business, like reading this glyph. They're having a fight with two giants in the background that were chained on either side of these glyphs. And the blissfully ignorant Fae released one of them because the giant was like, "Oh, they've had me trapped here for so long.
Please help me."
And she felt bad, and so she let it go. And he's like, "You fool!" And he went and released the other one. And so one was still half chained, stuck to its local area, whereas the other giant was just like on a rampage, like destroying the party. Okay, and I'm sitting there, I'm like not participating in this fight at all. I rolled initiative, so I can only do this on my turn. But I'm sitting there like scratching my head with my mage hand, and like looking at this wall. And the giant did an AOE attack that encapsulated me. And that was its last mistake. Because it took me from 137 life to 27 life.
Oh my gosh.
This is how bad, like this encounter was not scaled very well.
Yeah.
To be clear. And so my dude got very angry. And so that invoked the neutral in me. I was like, okay, well, that's how we're going to play. I had the ability to it was either phasing or blinking, where you technically go to another realm.
Oh, I know what you.
And the objects that you take with you on your person go with you.
Yep.
But they don't physically exist in this realm.
Yep.
And so, I broke off a stalagmite. And I went into blink, and I went with my mage hand and put it right where the giant's brain would be, because I'm not interacting with the physical realm.
Right.
And then I just let it go, and I left the blink. And so he very suddenly took like 100 D100s of just brain hemorrhaging of a rock existing in his head now. And the party was so confused, like as far as in-game, they had no idea what just happened, but I'm just sitting there turning like huffed, and I turned back and looked back at my glyphs.
I can just picture, it's like, Blobbert, could you please read faster?
Well, it was just this thing where it's like, because they still think I'm a pet, they don't know what I'm doing, but I'm actually like a sorcerer. I'm well versed. I just can't communicate well.
He's smarter than all of us, apparently.
Yes. And so they have no idea throughout the whole campaign how powerful I am. They just think that I'm like a dog.
Yep.
And so it was
when
just
really
like,
you're God, which is dog backwards.
Yes, I was actually God the whole time. But no, so it was like really fun in that campaign, just having all these homebrew moments of like, I want to do this.
Interactions that don't have any rules written that
exactly
aren't necessarily functional, but are fun to do.
They fit with my character. Yes. I express to the DM exactly what I'm wanting to do. I'm not very vague. I'm not that kind of player. I like have a very specific set
this is what I want to do,
and I will roll, and I will roll with those rolls. So it's like, okay, well, that didn't quite happen how I wanted it to. Let's go this direction. But I always run it with the DM. I don't just, I'm gonna roll perception, and then I got a nat 20, so this is what happened. No, I still want the DM to convey stuff to me. But I do have some stuff that I want to run by the DM. I want to do it this way. I want to do this.
You know what my favorite homebrew is? I call this DM mistake. So now it's just how the rules are going to be. Perry's character was an Eldritch Knight, and I told him when I was looking at him, like, cool, pick anything from the Evocation Abjuration. I forgot to read that it was only from the wizard spells.
Yeah.
So he was like, okay, cool. He picked Thunderous Smite, which was from the Paladin thing, and he loved it so much. I'm like, you know what? You can have it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I even tied it to like stick.
You don't have to rules lawyer.
Yeah. I even tied it to like stick is the reason you get it.
Yeah.
So, and that's why it became.
That happened to me recently. Someone was playing an Echo Knight, and I was like, yeah, your Echo Knight gets to attack in addition to you. It's like a clone. It's not. It's like you get to choose to attack yourself or from your echo's position.
Gotcha.
Which, when reading, I'm like, that sounds so dumb and underpowered for a fighting class.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? No, it's just a shadow clone at this point. Let's just run with that because it's way better.
Is that Naruto?
Yes. I didn't watch Naruto. I just know
Naruto.
Naruto. Shadow clone jutsu Naruto.
And then he turns into a hot girl or something.
Yeah.
The
something
transformation jutsu is different.
Something
Oh.
about a
What am I missing
fox.
here?
I watched like the first episode. I
I
don't
watched
like
the first
this.
season.
I watched all of it subbed and dubbed
Never
twice.
watched
Full fillers
I
and
watched
one
sub.
just canon episodes.
I just watched sub, and I watched the whole first season, and then I started the first episode of the second season, and I fell off.
Jamie
Really?
really liked it. I think he watched everything. He was a big fan.
Yeah. So homebrew I love doing in D is
That's why Jamie runs that way. Just kidding.
is the items that have hidden drawbacks. There's a recurring character
Oh,
I've
these
had
are
in
fun.
quite a
Okay.
few campaigns, and I have him in almost every one shot I run. Is Blackthorn. He's like a snake oil salesman.
Oh, him.
Yes.
Oh, I love what. So there's a story where it's like, oh, that guy.
Yes, and he's
Yeah.
always peddling some homebrew item, and it looks great. It sounds great on paper,
Mhm.
but it's not so great. He'll like health potions. You'll drink it, and it'll restore you up to max health, and that's it. You're done. You're great. But then on my side, after 4 hours have passed, usually after the fight, you lose all those health points.
I see.
So if you gain 100 health points, and then you go down 120, you KO yourself after 4 hours.
What?
You don't have health left.
Oh, I love this.
But if you're still full health, you just go back to how you were. It's just an undo button. You can get one that gives you like true sight and enhanced vision, like bird eyes to zoom in.
Right.
But after those 4 hours, you go blind temporarily.
I love. Okay,
That's
so
really
Yeah.
fun.
snake oil magic man sounds really fun.
Yes, it's great. He was like inspired by P.T. Barnum.
And he could be a character that you bring in other campaigns.
I use him in everything. He's a traveling. He'll give you great items that work for their purpose.
I
You
love.
just
They
have to be
work.
prepared for the recovery period, or you can if you convince someone else to take it, pawn it off to an enemy or something like that. Just wait for the side effects to kick in because you know it's going to be bad. If
Why
you've
would
met
you give
before.
him that? 5, 4, 3.
How long do I have? 5.
It's-
5 what?
Yeah.
Maybe 4.
That's 3 now, bud.
Yeah, I very much love the genie's evil wish.
It's the monkey paw
situation.
thing,
Yeah.
right? It's
Like,
the-
yeah, I'm giving you what you wanted, but
There's-
something happens next.
That sounds
I think,
great.
like in it, you for the session, you or the most recent one, you were like, okay, you can go shopping, and his shop was one of them, and all of us collectively were like, don't like.
He has some great items in the shop.
I would buy
does,
from
but I
him
don't like
every
it.
time.
Uh-huh.
I always have a little bit of chaos in
I
me.
would definitely be
No.
like, oh, I want to go visit Blackthorn. What has he got today?
I would be
they're,
Blackthorn's
they're
biggest
great.
customer.
They're super beneficial. You just got to be ready. And I said it's not like crazy or gonna kill you. Like I said it for a 3 or 4 hour time limit. So after a fight, after
So
some travel,
it is always temporary.
I'm gonna ask question like, okay, how many health potions are you taking? Because I'm logging
Okay.
those numbers.
I
And when
would,
that 4th hour hits, how much HP do you have?
I
You're
would-
going down this much.
Brian, I agree. I would totally like Blackthorn on my cloak. Like I'm
Yeah.
Blackthorn sponsored. It's the Talladega Nights, man.
Yeah.
This is dangerous and whatever, but I do love Fig Newtons.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love things like that.
Mhm.
That I love wacky things.
Mhm.
And I feel like the rule books themselves don't have a lot of wacky.
No,
they have, you can get a sword with +2, a sword that crits more. I'm like, that's fun. How about a sword that crits more, but after 3 crits, it breaks?
Brandon, it's your favorite card, Mace +2.
Mace.
We'll
We'll talk about
real
the
life
magic.
card.
We'll talk about that in the magic episode.
Yeah.
I don't understand these
I
references.
love the thing of like you give the player something that isn't definitely intended to be a bad thing.
Mhm.
Tyler was super obsessed. He wanted a cursed item.
On
And
purpose?
on purpose. I guess on
Tyler
purpose.
love
is
cursed
a
items.
wild man.
So what happened is the first there was this group of very powerful beings who had tried to ascend to godhood and were defeated and captured. They were broken out by a group who wanted them to reascend. And the first thing was, they had to go take on each of these individuals. And one of them was he had some weird it was like the something, but he was death. He was trying to
Mhm.
replace death himself. He was actually once a cleric of the god. And he had this really cool cursed scythe I called Soul Slasher. And he's, they're fighting him, everything. And what wound up happening is after they killed him, they're looting his body, right? And Tyler goes, "Can I have his scythe?" And I was like, sure.
No, it's evil.
Yeah. I had not intended for them to like keep anything. They're like, he's like, can I have the scythe? And I went, yes.
Me and Fallout carrying the item out of the store.
Immediately upon picking up the scythe, it started going, hey, you want to start killing things? And slowly just like, yeah. And what he found out is every time he killed something, it collected a soul. Or not collected a soul, but it would like a points. And he was slowly just working towards going crazy with it. He did eventually go crazy, and they had to pry it from his hands and take him to a high level.
You pry it from my cold dead hand.
Because he's like, and when it got taken back, like the Thunder Speaker Akum's like, well, I want to hold this because this is evil, and I don't want nobody to have it. And Tyler's like, but my scythe. I gave him another item that was
less evil, not as malicious, but like I still want to kill things, but I'm not going to make you go crazy.
In like the same area, I've another player.
I'd like to go next as well.
We all have stories. But like another player, the DM was like, okay, here's this cool sword. You can have it. And everybody was like, we don't want a cool sword. We got cool swords. Like,
there's strings attached. DM's giving it to us for free.
Like,
what is it?
The next day, we look, or like one of us was holding the sword like in our bags or something, and we look at it, and it turned into an axe, and suddenly Barbarian's very interested. That's how you get the Barbarian.
He's
but like
shiny.
Did I say sword? I meant axe.
Yeah.
He's like, is anybody going to touch that? Is anyone going to take that last axe?
It like
Take it or
slowly
leave
made
it.
him go crazy, and it's the like same thing. Of, like it collects like blood, and it's like constantly doing this and making him go crazy slowly and slowly, and then we had to like kind of fight the Barbarian who has like 200 health.
I remember talking. Oh, sorry.
No, that basically is. I know the DM got it from like Vox Machina.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about that is like you get those players who are like, I want this, and you're like, you know, this is gonna kill you, but sure, I'm in. Let's go.
Like the Barbarian's health max is like down to 30 now. It's
that's rough.
If I may, one of the things I did with Robert is I took one of my 1 health spies, and there was a very deep borehole of some kind in a mine, and we wanted to know because we were being chased by something we could not deal with,
right?
And because she, like, DM wanted us to get further in the mine, she didn't want us to retreat.
Yeah,
and so I was like, I have no concept of how deep this is. Like, I shot a fireball down there and I couldn't see the bottom, so I was like, okay, go. And then I lost contact with it because it was so deep. And I was like, we cannot survive that. That's not happening. And then
fireball as a signal flare.
I did.
Third level spell, signal flare.
I feel like there's better ways to do that. I'll be honest.
But what else am I going to use it on? Hurting my team? Like, I think it's better I just get it done.
But yeah, so you're like, oh, that's too deep.
Yeah, and we found a staircase, got down to the bottom, and because I had been separated from that slime for too long during this adventure, it had become sentient on itself, and that was little Pinky, and little Pinky was just like a little slime because it ate a bunch of quartz crystals, and so it was pink in hue.
Yeah,
and it had no brain at all. It was very new to the world, and so it just followed me around everywhere, and I hated it. I tried every waking moment to kill it because I hated it so much. It just because it was a DM player character, whatever that was called, and a DM PC.
Yes,
and it would be so mischievous. Like, I was trying to negotiate getting into a circus because I just wanted to.
Right.
And Pinky just started bouncing on one of their heads, like one of the guards' heads, and you could just see the guard getting progressively more frustrated. And I'm like, Pinky, please. Pinky, like, I took Mage Hand and like scooped Pinky up and took him away. I was like, please don't do this to me.
But so you said you had something, Logan?
Yeah, so cursed items. This is one I do a lot. I like to give to level players. Is the Cloak of Better Resistance. So it's +2, and you get resistance to whatever damage type. Sometimes you get a pick. Sometimes it's whichever one I know you're going to go up against, and you get resistance to it. I like to offer it early, so at some point they'll choose to, leave it and pick a better item, like, maybe the clone of Malbec or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's a Cloak of Better Resistance, but it's a cursed item. When you take it off, you become vulnerable to that damage type. So early game, you're resistant to all this necrotic damage, and you're so excited. But then when you get greedy and decide to upgrade your gear, you become vulnerable.
And because you're limited
damage.
on how many items you can equip too, that's brutal.
Mm-hmm.
So either you keep it and now you're stuck with just that, or you get rid of. Oh, that's
because
like
people love upgrading gear.
Yeah,
and
as a player in the campaign, you're like,
yeah. And I mean, I don't want to necessarily punish upgrading gear, but I really want to make people think about everything they've gotten.
Not just a numbers.
Because once I'm like, okay, so you take it off. okay, your cloak of better resistance bursts into flames, and you are now vulnerable to the product damage.
It's not just that thing like you do in like a computer game. It's like, okay, cool, I got new gear, unequip, re-equip.
Yeah. I went from a green gear to a blue gear.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's like it's a minor thing, so you're like, okay, I'm now vulnerable to this. I'll have to live with that. But it makes you think all these other things I found and gotten
that I
from
can't.
treasury. Do I want to change it, upgrade it, take it off, or do something with it? Because it could have that negative side. Some of them do. Some of them just don't. Give players anxiety.
Oh, so now it's the thing of like now you're playing the thing
Why?
of.
But I like to do that because then it makes them think, so they're not just always spending all their money to min max upgrade anything to the newer, better version.
And that's kind of the whole idea of like homebrew is like to play in a new angle, play with like your give your players something to think about, do something they wanted to do, something you want to do.
Yeah, my favorite homebrew is middle ground homebrew, where it's like a gap between different types of upgrades or a gap between different types of engagements. Just homebrew something in the middle, something to get you along.
Yeah.
Yep. And that it's your greatest tool as a DM as well. Like you're constantly tweaking and messing with all those little dials in the back, and your players like, wow, they're so great. And you're like, no, man, I'm a bubblegum.
All the cards spread on the table, like
is bubblegum duct tape and a whole lot of luck.
the cards, Yugi.
And it's also the player just throwing you curveball after curveball, and you're just like, okay. Like Thresh started. He was just supposed to be an NPC they met in the desert to guide them, and they went, what if we feed him bacon and he comes along with us? Like, sure, man, he's with you now.
I remember when Thresh was injured.
Yeah,
and he's just eating a sandwich.
And like at the end of the fight, Thresh got hurt into the Jamie's. Creed was like, "Me too, buddy, me too." And then Thresh hands him a sandwich.
So good.
Thresh was this bug man. So the first, like after they got out, right? They went to the tavern and they fed Thresh, and he's a bug, so he just like. He doesn't know what spoons are, so he's just eating it like that. And Tyler's character goes, I'm not hungry anymore. Lars was not a fan of Thresh, and he grew on him because Thresh is like, I follow Stabby Man. It was Stabby Man, Thunder Man, Moon Lady, which is Megan's character before she left. I forgot what he called Creed. And I can't remember what he called Creed and Melka. I think he called Melka Shield Lady.
Probably, yeah.
It was Shield Lady, and I think Creed was Flame Sword Guy. Because his sword caught on fire. He's like, yeah, cool, he's Flame Sword Guy. Thresh was a simple creature. Because, yet again, in the telepathy thing, he could, he had a very limited telepathy, because so that's how he talked. And they came across these people who did not speak any of the languages the party knew. And their thought was like,
so
Thresh
can talk to them.
Thresh,
so like,
the
book
get
full.
Thresh!
So what they did is they go, okay, Thresh, we need you to come. And Thresh go, Thresh, okay. How did Thresh say that? Because like when they first met him, like he didn't like he's like sun go up, sun go down, sun go up, sun go down. Like so 3 days. Thresh go sure 3. What is 3? Thresh was my favorite. Thresh had a lot of nat 20 kills apparently too. He was just really good at killing things, and I was like, I don't want to steal the thunder. It was like, yeah, Thresh got the kill.
That's always fun.
Yeah. Overall, I mean, homebrew D&D is vast. Classes, characters, rules, items. Like you said earlier, the whole point is to make it fun for the players. I mean, some people are rule lawyers and they love that and good for them, but if the rules are not letting someone have fun or do what they want and have their cool, epic hero main character moment, it kind of defeats the point, because everybody at some point needs their main character hero moment.
It's a story to be told, and it's like you want to tell a fun story, and that means messing with the rules a little. It's also covering things that whoever makes your RPG, they're not going to cover everything, right? So it's like, well, you know what, I want to do this because it's like Ryan said, Blobber, or the black. Like these are great things that like let the player and the DM also have fun, as you did with like the negative item. Like that's probably a lot of fun. Like Blackthorn and the negative. I'm like, oh, what? Spin the wheel, see what you got.
Item of the week.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you got some ideas you might use in your own campaigns. Be sure to come back next week for the third and final installation of our Homebrew and You series.